all the way from the great state of Maryland. Welcome to a new edition of Urban Sentinel Live. I'm your host, Reggie Kearney, also the publisher of the Urban Sentinel magazine. We should be dropping a new edition in a few days, June, July edition. We've been kind of, a little slow this year in production, but we're going to get ourselves back together when it comes to the magazine. I want to welcome everybody to tonight's show. We're just going to sit around and jaw a little while, talking about some of the current events and how those current events affect us. That's all. That's all we're going to do tonight, So I'm glad to be with you all tonight and ask for you all support. Tell your friends after you have watched this show tonight to go to YouTube and look for Urban Sentinel Live, POD TV. You also can catch the show on podtv.com. No, podtv.tv. We're part of that group also. So, you got many outlets that you can catch us on. If you go to podtv.tv, you'll see the different, what we call gadgets, not gadgets, but different forms of technology we're on, like Roku and things of that nature, So go check us out. Check out some of the old shows, I think we got some good shows, because like I said, we're just going to chop it up. Waiting for my guest to come on, Richard Cuffman down in Jacksonville, Florida. He's going to join us tonight, and we're going to get to rolling here in a minute, But before he gets here, let's just I'll take the liberty of just, we talk about some of the issues that are going on right now in this country, especially in the White House. I tell you, place is jacked up. But this is what y'all voted for.
That's what they voted for. But your boy Richard is here, so I'm gonna bring Richard into the house and everything like that, so y'all can cut it up and all of that. But I know Richard's got some things to say about, as we were saying before we started the show, about Trump and that plane of his and this whole golden dome that he wants to do. But I'll let y'all deal with that. But yeah, he just got all kinds of crazy ideas. So I'm going to tell us it off to.
Hey, man. What's up, Richard?
Hey, fellas. How are you?
Fine. See, Richard probably voted for this mess that we in right now. He probably went in and cast his vote. Didn't tell nobody he was going to vote for this.
For Trump?
Yeah. No. The crazy guy.
No, I was invited on a couple podcasts, primarily because I wasn't a Trump fan, and one guy in particular invited me on without telling me that he was lowering me into a shark tank of Trump loving brothers. And I didn't have any kind words to say. And it proves out, what we're missing, black folk, especially those that are Trump lovers, they've been drinking the Kool-Aid that they've been serving up since they discovered how to create propaganda. And that happened in the late 80s when Reagan ran, and then Bush got his first term. But they Bush said, read my lips. Remember that? Read my lips. No new taxes. And they realized that pulling the plug on taxes meant that there was no money to pay the bills. And then suddenly he had to come back and raise taxes. But they had to now create an enemy that would focus the poor white people's attention on somebody else, and that just continued what Reagan had started with the welfare queens and that whole attack. Washington elite liberals. The word elite liberals is I can say it, but it's I'll clean it up. N-word lover, and because they had to find new ways to discriminate against us without actually saying it. Because you got to remember, back in the mid to late 80s, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, affirmative action, all of that carried a lot of weight because now the Supreme Court had, dropped the hammer on these white Southern races and said, you can't do this anymore. And now there were laws that made it so. And this is how they got slick.
Mm-hmm.
When they passed the Civil Rights Act, or the Voting Rights Act specifically, there was a provision in the Voting Rights Act that said, not only are we going to make certain that y'all southern states do what you're supposed to do, meaning do right by these black people, but every 5 years, you're going to have to come back and we're going to check on you to make certain you are doing what you're supposed to. That's what it was supposed to be. But with each president that came along, it wasn't 5 years to check on the evil of the white folk. It was 5 years, about within maybe 30 years or so after the Civil Rights Act, they started saying, now we're going to come back and check and see if we need the Civil Rights Act anymore. That 5-year checkup wasn't meant to see if the Civil Rights Act was needed. It was to see that these white folk were doing what they were supposed to be doing. And if they weren't, we're going to turn up the screws.
Yeah.
But what black folks started doing was we fell asleep at the wheel. We started hip hopping and crack dealing and doing all the other stuff that we were doing, and we totally forgot that while we up here partying and trying to be the next rap mogul, these suckers were planning and having meetings and creating organizations like Citizens United and whatever the foundation.
Heritage
Foundation, any of these fancy names, Foundation for Truth, the Justice the American Way, they all are funded by the same organizations, but they're split up so that they could attack us. But that brings me to what I'm saying about today. My black male friends who are telling me about how great Trump is, they totally ass out now because they pledge their allegiance to him. Like the Republican Party, no matter how stupid he does, or no matter what, it's like, yes, that's a great idea. So taking this $400 million jet from the Qataris, or them buying $2 billion of Trump crypto. If Obama had done any of that, hell, if Obama had gotten a pair of Nikes from anybody, they would have been ready to impeach him.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But look, so like I said, the Heritage Foundation, a lot of stuff that this country is going through now is because of that blueprint they put together, and they've done it ever since Reagan been in office. The problem is each time a Republican went into office, they weren't able to carry out the agenda of the Heritage Foundation. So it's been around for a while. Now, I want to ask you a question that's going to lead into another question. Do you think a black person truly can be a racist?
Not at all.
Okay, now, the reason I ask you that is because there's a brother who has a Facebook page. I think you've probably seen it, the African History Network, I believe it's called. And the question was surrounded and was talking about those influx of so-called immigrants from South Africa, okay?
Right.
The ones who probably left their homes because they didn't want to pay on their homes no more, thought they'd come to America to get a better payday. Because even if I'm a landowner, even though I'm in the minority, I'm just not going to jump ship, leave all my belongings back there, leave my investments back there. So I'm very suspect of those individuals that came into this country, because I think they're here just because, Trump will probably give them a little money to survive with and give them a place to live. But, so we got into some deep conversations. The one thing amazes me, I don't know if it's bots or truly people getting on these sites, the comments that whites make on these sites. Now I wonder sometimes, why would a white person go to an African history site on Facebook to make comments? But I would, and when I make my comments, and a lot of times I will I'll do some research to put with it, because I know how they can be. So I end up being called a racist because of the way I felt about the situation and about what was going on with these people coming into the country, because there are other people that were promised to come into this country, people from Afghanistan that helped with the war when the United States was there, other areas of the world that had already been guaranteed a spot to come into this country, as a refugee. Now, Trump has closed the door on them, but all of a sudden, he wants to bring in these racist South Africans to fill his quota to try to build up his white base.
Well, let me tell you, and let me just clear up why it's impossible for a black person to be racist.
Okay.
Now, black people can be prejudiced. Mm-hmm. They can be bigoted. Mm-hmm. They can be ignorant, stupid, mm-hmm. all those things that come with racism. You can be all that. You can even hate another race. Mm-hmm. But the key that takes it up to racism is everything that I believe I can act on. Mm-hmm. See, I can, if I believe that white people should be denied housing, that's bigoted, that's racist, that's prejudice, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But I can't stop white people from getting housing. Mm-mm. I cannot pick up the phone. I can't make the banks draw a circle around the white community and say none of these MFers in this circle will get a loan. Mm-hmm. I can't pass a law from the Supreme Court that says all white people got to sit at the back of the bus. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. And if you want to know just how the inability for black people to be racist, even if we wanted to do it, it's too easy for them to undo it. Black people in South Africa are trying to be racist against white people. They try to be racist. They want to be racist. They want to treat them suckers horribly. But what happens? Along comes another white man that can just pick them all up, put them on a spaceship, and move them to a new planet or a new country. The bottom line is, not only can we not be racist by doing evil things to them, even if we try to do evil things to them, they can easily be undone. That's the proof that black people cannot be racist. Now, look at how easy Trump is removing DEI from everything. Look at how easy he's taking books. He's firing the librarians. Anybody that looks black, he's able to do that. And not one black organization has raised up to say anything. Mm-hmm. That tells you that we are not only are we not racist, we do not have the juice, the power to be racist. Mm-hmm. And until we get the juice and the power to be racist, best we can do is be stupid, ignorant, and put the MAGA hat on and say some stupid stuff. But that wearing the MAGA hat don't make you racist. And besides that, when I get to the point to where I do have the power to exercise my, whatever my beliefs are over a group of people, especially white people, I ain't gonna be using it for that. I'm gonna pay off all my debts and be debt free. Once I wipe out these student loans, I'm good. I'm done. I ain't gotta worry about nobody else. Mm-hmm. So, but I think what we need to do is this. It's time now for us to put to bed the "we shall overcome" conversation. It's time for us to put to bed the "we got to fight racism." We know that. It's time to put to bed the we got to go to church and get to know Jesus, and Jesus need to save your soul, and all that other stuff that we've been doing for the last 350 years in this country. Mm-hmm. It's time now for us to shift gears and prepare for what's to come. Do you guys remember Tony Brown?
Yeah.
He was the man back in the late 70s and 80s, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when the desktop computer came out and everybody was doing all these stories about what the computer was going to do to change things. And Tony Brown said, with these computers, in one generation, we're going to be able to make up all that we've not had in all these years. The computer will allow us to catch up in one generation. Now, if that was true in 1980, and of course, while Tony Brown was saying that in 1980, the CIA was cooking crack and dumping it into our community with Ronald Reagan being behind it, selling drugs, taking that money, fighting the war in South America. So we know that the opportunity for us to take off and build our economy was harpooned by the CIA, by the federal government. Fast forward to today. If Tony Brown said with just a desktop computer coming out, and I got more equipment sitting here on my desk here in my room, I got an entire broadcasting network. I'll show you that real quick. It's a mess, but there it is. It's an entire broadcasting network.
Computers got everything going on.
Richard,
I got a quick question for you along the lines of what you're talking about, and this is for both you and Reginald and everything, but we got an exhibit at Haytime, actually at my home studio today and everything along those lines, but it's about Booker T. Spiceley. He was a soldier that was killed in the 40s around the time of World War II because he did that whole notion of getting on the bus before and going to the front row well before Rosa Parks. So there was a whole case involving Herman Lee Council, who was the white guy that I think actually might have killed him if I remember the story correctly and everything. But this is where it comes interesting, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, Richard, is when they tried to get the papers, because, the Lewis Austin, the founder of the Carolina, well, one of the people behind the Carolina Times, I don't think he was the founder. He might have been the second person that was there in that paper and everything, but he was definitely involved in the civil rights struggle, had conversations with Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and a number of other folks. But when they wanted to get their records, they couldn't find the microfiche because a lot of our papers weren't microfiche and weren't documented. But Lewis Austin was considered an enemy of the state. So the FBI had a file on him, and that's where they found the papers at. They found the papers and the articles because they had a file on him because the FBI, even back in the 40s, was keeping track of people that they thought were enemies of the state. So I just wanted your take on that, because that's how they found records of what was going on in the Carolina Times and some of the things that they were reporting in terms of trying to get the civil rights in that era, because the FBI had those files.
No, well, and this is while you were talking about that, I was thinking about our need to keep track of our own records. We have the infrastructure, and we have such a great infrastructure to build change from especially because we two main organizations, our Greek organization, sororities and fraternities. That's a great network. It's a very identifiable network. And we also have the church, even though the church has sort of been missing in action these last 30 years, 40 years or so, because the white church obviously went to work, and they didn't stop until they got 6 Supreme Court justices in their favor and a president that's about ready to get rid of everything and put the flag, the cross of Jesus and the flag. And white folk will be happy as long as you put Jesus in the front and black people in the back, they'll be good. So, but my point in that is I look at like the Greek organizations, the Alphas, the Kappas, all of those, and then the black church. The black church is sort of like the railroad track. And I remember I grew up in a community. Every black community had the railroad track that ran along the back, right? I don't know if y'all did, but I could like a block of, like right across the street, there was a row of houses, and then right behind those houses was the railroad track. And every now and then you'd get to a section of the railroad track that the train had not gone down for years. And so it wasn't cleaned up. The grass wasn't cut. You know that the train just never went down that track anymore. And that's the way I look at the black church. And then if you go down the track toward the NAACP and these organizations, they're kind of like the tracks that the grass has grown over. And then you got these wonderful Greek organizations, and these are like the train cars that could be rolling along these tracks, but they're not. We're not using them the way that we could use them. My point in all of this is, if we were to take the infrastructure and go and take the laws that are in existence, for instance, everybody knows what a 501c3 is, right? You know, nonprofit organization. Everybody talks about a 501c3. But do you know very few people know that there's a 508 A1? or 1A, 508, 1A or A1 or something like that. But a 508 is it's called a financial ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you already have a church, you can start a 508 financial ministry and basically create a bank within your church under 508 with no regulations, no filings, no restrictions, nothing, because the federal government is already keeping its hands off of the white church. And it was created so that these white churches could pool their money under the name of the church and the federal government wouldn't touch it. We could do the same thing.
Yeah, we could definitely do the same thing. Hey, Reginald and Richard, this question for both of you, because you kind of mentioned it, Reggie alluded to it. We keep worrying about these refugees, and we got these South African refugees, but technically speaking, shouldn't we be getting money? Because I know there was that whole conversation around reparations and things along those lines, but it seems to me that the original refugees would be the African-American population, because many of us came from other countries. We don't know what country we came from, but many of us came from those various African nations and or Caribbean nations, because a lot of times we came through the Caribbean states. And if you want to go to our native brothers, many of them have black roots as well as some Asian roots. So it seems to me that us and the natives would be the original refugees. So he needs to send us some money. That's my point. That
I saw a video, and this brother made it really was a good point, and he pointed out that the reason why we don't get reparations is reparations come after the genocide. The Japanese got reparations after they had done what they did. The Jews got the reparations after. The reason why black folk are not getting reparations is because ours is still ongoing. We haven't reached the end of them destroying us. We're still in chains. We're still being enslaved. We're still being. They don't want to give you it's like, why would we give you reparations when we still giving you the mess? We're not finished destroying you. That's why we don't have reparations, and it's an ongoing mindset. So not only do they not want to give us any money, they don't want to end the carnage. They still want to continue this process of destroying us. What we've got to do is recognize, and I always bring this up, guys, is number one, we've got $1.6 trillion in spending power. And if I had it on my screen, I'd show you a graph that our spending power has doubled every 10 years since 1960. So it was like 50 million in 60, and then it became 100 million, and then 200 million, and then 400 million, and then it hit 800 million. And it was scheduled to hit 800 million in 2010. 2010. It was going to hit 800 million. What happened right before that? They flushed the economy down the drain. But it did double anyway, and it hit 1.6 trillion in 800 billion. I'm sorry, it was 800 billion. It hit 1.6 trillion in 2020. Now, it's supposed to go from 1.6 to 3.2 in another 10 years. Do you know what's going to be in 20 years? It's going to go from 1.6 to 1.7. It's going to flatline for the next 20 years. Why all of a sudden is our spending power flatlining and projected to go down? Because they're doing everything within their power to attack all the things that brought us here. Government jobs, government support, infrastructure within our community, all those things that made us wealthy. We're sitting back and watching Trump just pull the plug on it left and right. And you got back to what we were talking about from the very beginning. You got these brothers for Trump that are going,
they root for Trump and everything. Hey, Reggie, I got a question for you, because it came down to Duke University, which I know Reggie spent some time at North Carolina Central University and everything. But there's a lot of people that are upset at the way that our universities, and it's not just our universities, are being targeted. Because I was just reading an editorial here in Durham where a lot of the working class people that are being impacted are usually people in our minority community, whether that is the hospital workers that might be doing some of the lower jobs, not necessarily the doctors, and not that their jobs are lower, but they're not like the high paying jobs. When I say lower, that's what I mean and everything. Or some of the people that are working as cleaning crews on some of our universities, because there was an editorial where the guy was talking about how they needed a $25 living wage and everything like that. But a lot of the jobs that have been cut, whether it's Harvard or whether it's Duke or whether it's down there where you are at Miami University and everything along those lines, or Jackson State and all along those lines, a lot of those are our lower end jobs that have been impacted by Trump targeting the education system, and particularly our higher education system, because as you know, Richard, a lot of the jobs that we have are usually the jobs that are considered the lower paying jobs in the spectrum of work.
Right.
Well, one of the biggest things is they don't want to see us get ahead. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons you got this onslaught of layoffs in the federal government. Because you got to realize here in the D.C., Virginia, Maryland area, the majority of the federal workers are blacks, okay? And my county I live in PG County, the middle class has done well because of the federal government, So, I mean, that's being destroyed at this time by this government who really doesn't care. Now, and like Richard said, until they can squash us down flat, we're going to continue. We're going to continue to fall financially. One of the things I wanted to go back and backtrack on was the fact, what has happened to the effectiveness? When I ask this question, what has happened to the effectiveness of our black organizations? Okay, because they're not effective now. At one time, the NAACP would be all over some of this mess that 47 is doing in office. Especially when it comes to Medicaid and things of that nature. NAACP and other organizations would be all over it. You don't hear that anymore. Then what you have in the black church is the black church is based that has, in a lot of sense, in many instances, has walked away from the civil rights movement because, first of all, they worried about the 501 or 503C, their status and everything. They don't want to lose nonprofit status. Then you got so many of these guys, so-called preachers, okay, that are defending their desire or their reasoning, trying to give reasons on why they become Republicans, because the Democrats go against everything that's in the Bible, so they want to justify themselves as Trumpsters because of what the Bible says and stuff. So we've got a big disconnect in our community now, and it's hurting because really I don't see. I always ask this question: who is leading the civil rights movement in the black community at this time in America? Who is leading the civil rights movement? Yes, we got Dr. Barber out there, who, poor guy, the guy's working hard. He stays out there in pain, but he's out there. But after that, who is really running things?
What about your brother from Maryland, the one that is being put out candidate for president next year?
Westmore?
Yeah, Westmore.
I mean, Wes, I like Wes. He's a good guy. But I don't think. I think next presidential election, the Democrats going to go with a white guy.
Well, here is in fact in Jacksonville, we're about to launch a very big social experiment, because Jacksonville is a really great city to do this type of a social experiment, because we are a consolidated city, like where each of you all are. Mm-hmm. You probably have like 8 to 9 different cities within your county, mm-hmm. right? So you drive 20 minutes and you're into another city, right? If mm-hmm. 20 minutes east, north, south, east or west, you drive 20 minutes and you're in another city. Here in Jacksonville, you can drive an hour and you're still in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is back in 1960, all of the cities consolidated into one county. So Jacksonville and Duval County, that's why when you hear Duval, Jacksonville and Duval County are one and the same. And there's only three cities, 2 beaches and one city out west, Baldwin, these little white cities said, "Nah, we ain't gonna do that. We're not gonna put our eggs in that basket with all black people." But back in the '60s, they combined in one city, and so what that means is we got a city of about 800,000. I think we're just crossing 1 million people, but we've got 840 square miles of city. To put that into perspective, we just now crossing 1 million people in 840 square miles. The island of Manhattan, I think, sits on 14 square miles, and they got like 10 million people in that little bitty area. So Jacksonville has so much growth, but what black folk need to do is stop being Republican or Democrat.
Be independent.
Not independent. Independent is a party as well. But here is what we need to do is be what I say is I'm NPA, no party affiliated. So think about it this way, like the NFL. When you have no party affiliation, especially if you are strong, then your input will change the game for any one side. If you look at what happened with Shedeur Sanders and the draft, the only reason he got drafted at 144 is those owners did not want the circus that was going to come following him, because they know that for the next 4 or 5 years, the media is going to focus only on Shedeur Sanders. The same way the media only focused on Donald Trump. That's why Trump is the Shedeur Sanders of politics. He came in with, remember there were 17 other Republicans on the stage, and he gave a stupid name to all of them: Little Marco Rubio, Crooked Hillary, this and that, Pocahontas, and all of them, just one at a time, he picked them all up, because that power of being the independent influencer can tip the scale enough that everybody slides over to you. We were at one time that independent influencer. And I don't mean independent as a party. I mean totally separate. We were on the path to becoming the Freedmen Party from 1865 to 1877. And if you don't think that we were powerful, go and look at what happened during that period. We went from having zero representation before slavery, zero, nobody elected in office. And by the 1860, 1870, 1875, we got like 14 blacks in Congress. How did that happen?
Yeah, we had that power, Richard, but as you know, because I'm here in North Carolina, there were people that were terrified of that, and they basically burned it down, because they burned down Wilmington, they burned down a number of the other places that we had that kind of power. So that's the fear that some people have, is that if we get that kind of power, and you're basically talking about being like a free agent, if I can use that sports analogy and everything like that. But there's definitely folks that are afraid of making that sacrifice, and I definitely know that sacrifice can be one that is worthy and needs to be made. But you got some people out there that are want to get along to get along, if I can use that.
Go along to get along. But here's what the point that I'm making. In 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel James Tilden ran for office. Tilden was the Democrat, and Rutherford B. Hayes was a Republican. Now Tilden won, and they were about to go to the Supreme Court to argue it. But these white folk realized, wait a minute, we've been fighting over this slavery thing. We went to Civil War and everything. We're about to go back into a war again. Why don't we just go ahead and close a deal? If you go and Google it, and for anybody that finds this or listens, I challenge you to go and do some research on what's called the Compromise of 1877. And in the Compromise of 1877, Rutherford B. Hayes was literally given the presidency. He didn't have to go, no Supreme Court. There was no legal precedence, nothing. It was a secret meeting. And in that meeting, Samuel James Tilden said, "We'll give you the presidency if you will give us back the South." Yeah, we seceded. We created the war. We created a mess. You got your foot on our necks, and you're telling us to treat these black people nicely. But we'll give you the presidency if you remove these black people, move the troops from the South, allow us to have our way, and you stop. And then you get these black people out of this Congress. And it took them another 10 years, 12 years or so George Henry White was the last congressman to leave in 1901 or something like that. And he gave a wonderful speech when he said, and something to the effect of, Phoenix like we will rise again. Basically, he's saying, y'all have run us out, but Phoenix like we'll rise again. Another black person was not elected to Congress until like the 60s. So we had, how is that? Because white folk, white Democrats and white Republicans got together and decided that that third rail of black folk that have been influencing both sides, because we could go Republican or Democrat. Basically, we were saying, which one of y'all want to give us what we're looking for? And if you give us what we're looking for, even though we're only 13% of the population, 13% is enough to give you the White House. 13% is enough to give you Congress. It's enough to give you the Senate. But what are you going to give us in return? That's what we had from 1865 to 1877. That's why we got the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendments. And in that period, we got all of that. What did we get after that? Nothing. And that's because we don't recognize that our power is not in being Democratic or being Republican. Our power is in being a totally separate block of votes that are up for grabs. And we don't need to try and get another black president. What we need to do is get black folk voting all at once, and like, and what's the name? The governor of Westmore, right? Imagine, what is this? We got 45 million black folks. So let's say the net is a third of that, 15 million votes. 15 million votes that are going to go for a candidate somewhere to be president. Let's put our 15 million votes together and collectively say, we want Westmore to be vice president. So whoever will choose Westmore as vice president, don't matter, because both people, Republican and Democrat, have to choose a vice president. Whoever chooses Westmore as vice president, you get our vote. But you also have to have this in your platform. You got to promise to do this, this, and this. And how can we hold you accountable? Because if you don't do what you say you're going to do, and when you get into the office of the presidency, we're going to wipe you out when it comes time for Congress. And that's how we do it. We got to stop being Republican, stop being Democrat, and be whoever we need to be to get our agenda passed, period. The problem is we don't have an agenda. Are we going to be Muslim? Are we going to be Christian? Are we going to be, are we going to eat pork on this or not eat it? Are we going to do all these? And we can't get caught up in these culture wars. So what we've got to do is recognize, do you? If you want to be Muslim, do you. If you want to be Christian, do you. But we got to put all of that aside and say, here's how we're going to vote. And then vote that way. And watch what happens. They're afraid of us doing that. And that's why I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna shut up. Right now they've got a credit card with an unlimited balance. And whoever is in control 15 years from now has to pay that credit card. White folk know that by the year 2035, 37, somewhere up in there, they will stop being the majority. But by that time, we're going to have $100 trillion of debt. And guess who's going to be paying that credit card bill? The ones that are finally in power. We are. They know they can't stop us from taking power because our numbers are just changing. And they're dwindling. We're growing. And eventually, we're going to hit a moment of critical mass where you're going to start seeing black families grow and parents and all this other stuff. That's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. Their mindset to destroy
it would happen if, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. You look a little frozen, but I can hear you.
Yeah, picture is frozen. It would happen if we come together and work together, okay? Like I said, we got the Trumpsters black, we got the black Trumpsters, we got the black Democrats, and we got the black independents. All three need to come together to work together to get things done.
But Reggie, you can't even get the Divine Nine to work together all the time, with the Transatlantic Council and everything like that. So how are you going to get these organizations to work together. And this is for Richard too, when a lot of times they get caught up in their silos, for lack of a better term, and everything. And that's, I can even go to the social groups, as the ones like, and hopefully Reggie will come back, but hopefully the social groups like the Links and the Jack and Jills and the what's the other one, the Masons.
Yeah, well, listen, the key with that is, you said something earlier, and it was about to trigger something. A good friend of mine, Whitman Mayo, the guy that played Grady on Sanford and Son. Right. I met him. I was 28 years old, on my way to being the Tyler Perry. Before Tyler Perry, I was doing church plays and productions 10 years before Tyler Perry. But when I met Whitman, and you said earlier, they won't, or they, and I remember my friend and I, Whitman asked us, what do we want to do? And she said she wanted her own TV show. And I said, I'm good at managing stuff from the background. And so he says, well, why don't you be a producer? He says, you should produce her show. Yeah. And we both started at the same time. They won't let us, they. Whitman stopped us and he said, who is this they? Right. And where does they live? And then he said the words that made me the rebel that I am today. He said, listen, no revolution ever began with the masses. It's always 2 or 3 people who get together and decide to change things. We first got to be revolutionary. And the revolution has to happen without participation. This conversation that you and I are having right now, this is where it starts. Where are you? I keep forgetting where you are.
Durham, North Carolina.
Where's that?
Durham, North Carolina.
Durham, North Carolina. So I went up to Cincinnati last month and visited the African American Chamber of Commerce there in Cincinnati. Man, let me tell you, the African American Chamber is just, number one, they were voted the best chamber in the state of Ohio, not the best black chamber, the best chamber. The facility that they're in, the work that they're doing in that community, that's where we begin. If we can take the standard that the African American Chamber in Cincinnati has established, and let's duplicate that throughout the nation, that's the start. Yes, this is a long-term plan. I'm 65 years old. My man and my mentor, the guy that if I could choose a mentor, somebody that I could get their phone number and talk to them every day, it would be Warren Buffett. Oh yeah. I mean, Warren is 96 years old or something like that. He just announced that he's retiring. Like, okay, I'm no longer going to be CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. I haven't checked lately, but one share of Berkshire Hathaway is something like $200,000. He's never split the shares. So, $200,000 a share. But and my point is, I got another 31 years before I hit 96. And I believe we can get a lot done in 30 years. That's about a generation and a half. I think they count a generation like 20 years, but 25 years from now, we can say this is what we're going to have. And we gotta have that kind of long game. If we don't have the long game, these short-term things that we're doing are not going to make a difference. Let's see. I'm looking at the message that I guess you wrote that okay, so he's
trying to see what's going on with his computer and everything like that. So just trying to check what's happening and that and everything. But what do you say, Richard, to those folks that have got that crab in the barrel mentality? Because I understand what you're doing in Florida. It sounds like a great project, and I know some people that are doing some similar stuff here, like our Black Chamber of Commerce and a number of other folks, even the folks that did Black August in the Park, which will be coming up in a few more months. And they the family actually used to own a Kenyan restaurant, and actually they still own they don't have a physical restaurant, but they have like a catering business now and everything. But I know the Ocellos have been involved in trying to build up black business. But you do have some people that got that crab in the barrel mentality, and if they see one successful business, they want to find all the reasons to tear it down or not support it. So what do you say to those folks who've got that crab in the barrel mentality?
What I say is we have to begin. If we can't begin with the foundation being absolute love, right? So to the ones that have the crabs in the barrel mentality, I say, I love you. I start there. I start with, I love you, and you have a valid reason for feeling the way that you feel. I won't negate whatever it is that makes you feel the way you feel. I'm not negating that. And I'm not going to be any different to you than I would be anywhere else. When the Bible tells us love your enemy, it's not saying love your enemy for your enemy's sake. And that's the slave Bible that they got out there. That's the love your enemy is not about your enemy at all. Love your enemy is saying, don't let your enemy change the essence of who you are. Even your enemy, you should be the same person. The same love that flows from you when you're around your friends should be the same love that flows through you when you're around your enemy. Even your enemy should not change the essence of who you are. Once we can get to that point, to where even the naysayers in our community don't change the view that we have. Now we know that this long-term vision, we're going to be able to achieve it, because that you're not going to change if you'll let somebody come in and change the essence of who you are, then you might as well not have a 30-year vision. Because if they can change that, then the vision can change and all that other stuff. And when you're talking about bringing things into manifestation, especially from a higher realm and something that's been promised, I believe our ancestors somehow saw us today. There's certain verses in the Bible that tell you that it's in the Bible. And I truly believe that the name of Twitter was changed just so that it wouldn't bring this verse to fruition, and they're trying to stop it. The Bible says, be careful what you say about the king in your bedchamber, for a little bird may take the matter and tell it. That was written thousands of years ago.
Right.
And it was saying, be careful what you say about the king in your bedchamber, for a little bird may go and tell the matter. That bird is Twitter. The logo for Twitter is a little bird.
Yeah, it's a little bird. That's their logo. That's their logo for sure.
Yeah.
What do you say for? Oh, there you go. Let's see if I can bring him in on this one. There we go. Yeah. There we go. I got you on the other one. I get you on the first one, so I see you on the phone. So something was going on there and everything. Hey, and I know we're winding down, but we got Reggie back. But what do you say to the folks, Richard, that get caught up in the men? Reggie, you were talking about this earlier, in the nuanced stuff that's going on and the new toys that Trump is getting, because some people are all excited by Trump's new airplane that he spent all this money on, and now they're excited or not excited about this Golden Dome, and we really have no control over what the administration spends money on and everything like that. So what do you say to the people that are either excited or not excited by these new Trump toys? I mean, he already had crypto, and he also had his own Bible that he was out there selling, because at the end of the day, the man is a true carny and a true salesman. Yeah. He's the way that I look at it is we've got to treat what's going on in Washington like the raindrops on a tin roof. It makes a lot of noise. What we need to be concerned about is whether the roof is leaking, and meaning we got to take care of our house. And Reggie, while you were away, I shared with Mark what my good friend Whitman Mayo, and I may have mentioned it to you, played great in Sanford and Son. He said, who is this they? Where does they live? And then he said, no revolution ever began with the masses. It's always 2 or 3 people who get together and decide to change things. And I look at it this way. I think that this conversation here is all that's needed to begin to
start making this change. And I'll continue to encourage you guys. I'd love to have an hour conversation away from the podcast. I'd love to have a strategy session that, actually takes what we've got. We've got right now, I'm reading Urban Sentinel. Reggie, that's how I met you, talking about the Urban Sentinel and how I saw that. In fact, we'll come back and revisit that conversation, because I think I met you just before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then COVID ran a steamroller through all my plans. And then in 2021, my wife passed away. But we're, this month was a month of really restructuring. What I want to go back and say this before we wrap up. When I was talking about Tony Brown and what he said in 1980 was so powerful that because of the computer in one generation, and what Tony Brown didn't see at that moment, he was talking about the shift from Web 1 to Web 2. Web 1, if you guys remember AOL and the dial-up sound, and basically all you did back then was just go to somebody's website and read what was on the website. That was big back then. And then by the end or the beginning of the transition was when AOL came out with instant message, and it said, "You've got mail," right? Mm-hmm. Oh, that was it, man. He got an AOL email address. And but then Web 2 came out, and Web 2 was now not only read only, you could read and you could do transactions, and now suddenly e-commerce comes up, and that gave birth to Amazon. Well, that was right around the time that Tony Brown was talking about. The problem is we as Black people didn't jump on the Amazon train. We just became consumers. We've been continual consumers. So now Amazon is selling us the stuff. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they're all selling us the stuff, and we're buying it. And we got a 1.6 trillion to spend. Well, now comes Web 3. Web 3 is going to combine blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, and crypto finance. And when that happens, what's going to take place is you're going to have a crypto wallet. Your smartphone is probably going to get a little bit smaller, or it's going to be like a smartphone, maybe about half this size, but it's going to be a crypto wallet. And that crypto wallet is going to allow you to go anywhere to any other Web3 website and keep your data. So that means now when you go to Facebook and shop, or Amazon and shop, Facebook has 52,000 data points on you. There are 52,000 things they know about you. Hell, I don't know 52,000 things about myself. But who owns that? Facebook owns it. In Web3, you're going to own it. And when you can own that data and then put a price on it, and we start doing business with each other around the value of the data that we have, everything is going to change. And I know that right now, it may be going over everybody's head as I'm saying this, but I feel like Jeff Bezos did when Web 2 came out. Jeff Bezos saw that Web 2 was going to be huge, and look at where Amazon is right now. Mm-hmm. And I feel Web 3 is going to do that for African Americans. And in fact, I have a meeting on Friday with a software development team that is going to develop the point of sale system for our marketplace. And so in about 90 days to 6 months, we're going to be ready to unveil the cultural capital marketplace, where we literally will monetize first digitize it and then monetize it, every bit of data and every bit of value within the African American household. And once that happens, and then your household can do business with another household based on that data, and nobody can come in and burn it down and steal it. We're in a place now where artificial intelligence is our best friend. Mm-hmm. And we've got to, those of us that are, baby boomers, because I'm on the tail end of the baby boom. I was born 59. So the last of the baby boomers were born in 64. So I'm a baby in the baby boomer. But still, the baby boomer generation is that generation that's transferring 84 trillion on some estimates. Some people have it as high as $110 trillion over the next 10, 20 years. all we got to do is put our hands up and grab a little bit of that. But I plan on grabbing as much as I possibly can. So I would love to talk with you guys about how we can begin to structure it, and then maybe even use this podcast for updates on how we are moving forward, because I'm done with the talk, and I'm certain you all feel the same way, that we've got to get something done. And Mark, I know I got your information. I keep saying that we got to talk, but I got to get up there to North Carolina and at least visit and see what you guys are doing up there.
Yeah, we got the road. Now, look, listen. While I was trying to get back on, I heard you talking about you had visited the Cincinnati Black Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Who's the president and CEO of that?
Hold on. Let me give you his name real quick. Give me 1 second. Let me pause my camera while you guys can continue to talk while I do this thing here. I'm gonna give you all of it.
Watch this, Ma.
Somebody you think you know?
Oh, I do know. Okay. I just want to just
see if you still got the job that you used to know that having and everything. So it's the same gentleman. Cool. We're about to find out. Oh, by the way, the event did go well. We haven't done a show in a while, but Mother's Day weekend, we did have the Go-Go show, Trouble Funk.
Oh, okay.
Rocked the house. They rocked the house. The Belladonna, their sound was a little bit iffy, but they still did a good job and everything. And then the We Are One experience, which is the Frankie Beverly Band. You know, anytime you got people singing Joy and Pain, Sunshine and Rain, and Southern Girls, it was nothing but a sing-along. So it was straight up.
Reggie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hold on. I totally forgot how I made it. I'm up here trying to remember, because this is my 65-year-old brain. His name is Eric Kearney. And that's Eric's cousin. And did he tell you that we met that day? Did you ever talk to him?
I've texted him and everything, but I figure y'all did, but I haven't talked to him yet.
Man, I went there. I was so impressed with that brother and his whole team. And I've been talking about it ever since. I mean, I actually went to Cincinnati to drop in on my daughter, and just figured that while I texted Reggie, and I said, I'm here in Cincinnati. And that's when he told me my cousin is there. He's over the African American Chamber. Text me his number. And then I called Eric, and we talked that morning. And an hour and a half later, he invited me over to meet him. And they gave me the tour. I walked out of there, man. I'm still speechless, because the operation there was so, I felt like I was in a different timeline, a different universe. It was like, this is what the world would look like if white folk weren't so darn racist. You know?
Yeah. Cincinnati, excuse me, Cincinnati has a lot of black businesses, okay? And these black businesses support the Black Chamber, okay?
Yeah.
You know, hands down, they stand on business out there, you know. I mean, you don't hear a lot about Cincinnati as a city, but those black businesses in Cincinnati and in northern Kentucky, they got it going on. Same with Dayton, Ohio, too. They got it going on.
Well, I'm about to partner with my daughter. My son is in DC, and I mean, not DC, he's in Washington State, but because he works with Microsoft, I know I can't be trying to do no business to get, I can't get him away from Microsoft. My daughter just started her music school. She's working on her PhD in violin performance.
Oh, okay.
So, but she's there in Cincinnati, and she just started a music school. And so because of my 501c3, we're able to, you know, my goal is to expand our music programs. And I feel that, you know, Cincinnati would be a better hub even than Jacksonville. It's like that's the place where we need to build out from. You know, and because the support mechanism is there, they've got a strong population of African American business owners, and then we can ultimately create best practices. And that's the key, is create these best practices. And the way that I view myself is I feel like the Billy Graham of entrepreneurship, right? Billy Graham never had a church, but he did these great revivals, and he brought people to the church.
Right.
And so I feel like that's my role here. My role is to introduce entrepreneurs to the fact that entrepreneurship is a spirit. It's not just a set of things that you do business-wise. And if you tap into the entrepreneurial spirit, you can get that point of success that everybody's striving for. And that's what I'm hoping. And the one thing that we need is a solid media connection. So I just recently started a new multimedia company, and we'll come back and talk about Urban Sentinel connecting to that.
Okay. Well, I know you're going to wrap up, Reggie, and everything, but entrepreneurship is also a journey, because I know that one of my classmates, he was one of the original presidents of a major company, and I just found out today that company has now gone bankrupt. And it was a white-owned company and everything like that, but what used to be called Cree, which made their money in LED lights, and they sold their LED light business. They then became Wolfspeed, and Wolfspeed just filed for bankruptcy earlier today and everything like that. So that was a major blow. So we'll see what happens in our economy, because they were a major employer as well. Not as big as Duke, but they were a major employer.
Well, certain things, we're at a point of transformation, and more money is made in times like this than ever, because those that have their hands on it loosen it just long enough to make the transition. And some people transition and end up right back where they started. Like, oil companies are buying up the infrastructure for electric vehicles, and at some point, Exxon and Shell and all of those are going to say bye to the oil business, and next thing you know, they're owning the electric. So one other company, what's the company? It's Skype. There's these Skypes going out of business, and
they're gone.
Yeah, Skype at one time had 300 million subscribers. So these are times. The times are changing, man, and we've got to now get behind Black-owned businesses that can step up and be the next Skype, and be the next Amazon, and be the next. And we got to stop being consumers and become investors.
Yeah. Okay, guys, look, we got to roll and everything. It's been real. Enjoy talking to you all tonight. We got to continue this on. Like I said, the three of us, we got to get together one afternoon and, chop it up, and talk about it and see where we can go. So to my viewers and listeners, this has been the Urban Sentinel Show live with myself, Reggie Kearney, my producer, Mark Lee, and my good friend out of Jacksonville, Florida, Richard Cup. Until next Tuesday night, guys, have a good week. Be safe and stay out of trouble. And don't use the number 86 while you're out there, okay? You might get picked up by the FBI, okay?
That 8647. Y'all need to chill with that, right?
Later.
All right, later.
Okay.